Hello and welcome. Deep within the Grey Peak Mountains, where mortal feet seldom tread, and the wind carries songs older than human kingdoms, a secret pulses with ancient life. The trees remember what stone has forgotten. The streams whisper names that have no translation in common tongues. Every leaf that falls, every shadow that lengthens across moss-covered paths, guards a truth that elven kind has protected for over 10,000 years. This is not merely a hidden city. This is Evereska, the last true bastion of elven civilization on the mainland of Faerun. And you are about to discover why its very existence defies the march of time itself. The story of Evereska begins not with stone laid upon stone, but with a choice. A choice made when the great elven empires fell into civil war during the Crown Wars, when brother turned against brother, and entire realms shattered like crystal under hammer blows, while other elven communities scattered like autumn leaves before a storm. A group of visionaries looked upon the chaos and decided that survival required more than swords and spells. It required sanctuary. It required a place so perfectly hidden, so masterfully defended, that no enemy could find it. No army could breach it, and no tragedy could unmake it. The Moon Elves and Sun Elves, who would become Evereska's founders, traveled north from the burning ruins of their ancestral lands in the year 8600, before Dale Reckoning. They came from the fallen realms of Shamal Othrair, Mioridir, Orishar, and Ialur, survivors carrying what they could save from civilizations that had consumed themselves in war. They sought not conquest, but concealment. They desired not expansion, but endurance. Among their number walked the most skilled mages of the era, elves who had studied at the great academies before they became battlefields, who understood the weaving of magic into the very fabric of reality itself. These were not merely spellcasters. They were architects of impossibility. The Grey Peak Mountains, known to the elves as the Sheredim, offered what they sought. Rising like ancient sentinels along the western edge of Anarok, these peaks formed a natural fortress, their slopes treacherous, their valleys hidden, their heights perpetually crowned with snow and cloud. Most important, the mountains possessed something else, something the elven mages recognized immediately. The area thrummed with natural magical energy, ley lines converging beneath stone and soil, creating currents of power that only the most sensitive could detect. In that year of 8600, before Dale Reckoning, the elves discovered what would become known as the Vale of Evereska. Picture a valley cradled between towering peaks, sheltered from harsh winds, blessed with springs that never froze even in the deepest winter. The valley floor stretched for nearly 18 miles at its longest point, and 4 miles at its widest, covered in forests of ancient growth that had never known an axe's bite. Meadows bloomed with flowers that existed nowhere else in Faerun. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential, as though reality wore a thinner veil in this place. But the founders saw beyond the physical beauty. They perceived the magical possibilities. The convergence of ley lines created a nexus point, a location where spells could be anchored with unprecedented strength, where enchantments could draw upon the earth's own power rather than depleting the caster. This was not merely a good location for a city. This was the perfect location for a mythal. Mythals represent the pinnacle of elven magical achievement. These are not simple enchantments that fade with time or weaken with distance. Mythals are permanent magical fields woven into the very essence of a location, self-sustaining, drawing power from the land itself, capable of effects that would exhaust even the mightiest archmage if maintained through normal spellcasting. Creating a mythal requires multiple high mages working in perfect synchronization, often over years or even decades. The slightest error can result in catastrophic failure, killing the casters and rendering the location magically dead for centuries. The founders of Evereska understood these risks. They accepted them. For years, the eldest and most powerful among them prepared, studying the ley lines, calculating the optimal points of anchor, determining which spells to weave into the mythal structure. They consulted texts saved from burning libraries, conferred with mages who had created mythals of their own, and meditated upon the lessons learned from mythals that had failed. When the ritual finally began, the most powerful high mages among the refugees participated, weaving their magic over days and nights that blurred together in continuous effort. The words they spoke predated the common tongue by millennia, drawing upon power that made the air crackle and the ground tremble. The other elves watched from a distance, seeing the sky above the ritual site filled with aurora-like lights, hearing music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. When the mythal completed, the high mages collapsed, exhausted beyond measure, but alive and successful. The Vale of Evereska now existed within a bubble of altered reality, a pocket of space where the laws governing magic had been rewritten according to elven will. The cost had been tremendous, though the full accounting would not be known for years, as some mages never fully recovered from the strain of channeling such immense power. The effects were immediately apparent. The entire vale became imperceptible to divination magic cast from outside its boundaries. Scrying attempts failed. Attempts to teleport directly into the vale without permission resulted in arrival miles away, often in dangerous mountain terrain. The boundaries themselves became nebulous, seeming to shift and change, so that those who wandered near without invitation found themselves inexplicably turned around, heading back the way they came without quite realizing what had happened. But the mythal offered more than concealment. Within the veil, elven magic functioned with enhanced potency. Healing spells worked faster and more completely. Defensive enchantments proved harder to dispel. Plant growth accelerated, ensuring that food would never be scarce. The climate itself moderated, winter becoming merely cool rather than harsh, summer bringing gentle warmth rather than oppressive heat. Most important, the mythal created a barrier against hostile magic. Spells cast with malicious intent weakened as they crossed the boundary, often failing entirely. Creatures of evil alignment found the veil deeply uncomfortable, experiencing a sense of wrongness that intensified the longer they remained. This did not make Evereska invulnerable, but it made direct magical assault nearly impossible. With the mythal established, construction could begin in earnest. The elves did not clear the ancient forest, but built within it, around it, incorporating the trees into their designs. Buildings rose through a combination of magic and craftsmanship, structures that seemed to grow from the earth rather than being imposed upon it. White marble, quarried from the mountains, formed walls and columns. Moonstone adorned doorways and windows, carved into patterns that served as both decoration and enchantment. Crystal harvested from deep caverns created windows that caught and refracted light in impossible patterns. The city that emerged over the following decades bore little resemblance to human settlements. Where humans built in straight lines and right angles, the elves created flowing curves and organic shapes. Where humans stacked stone in brutal efficiency, the elves wove architecture and nature into a seamless whole. Towers spiraled upward like ancient trees reaching for sunlight. Bridges arced between buildings, delicate as spider silk, yet strong as steel. Gardens flourished on rooftops and balconies, so that the entire city bloomed with color regardless of season. The heart of Evereska centered on 3 prominent hills known as the Sisters, which formed a triangle around the inner city. The highest of these hills, called Belcrest, would become home to the fountain heart of shimmering gold, a temple to Hanali Selenil built of white marble and moonstone. The founders positioned their most important structures around these hills, understanding that elevation provided both practical defense and symbolic significance. The Moonspire rose as one of the city's most beautiful structures, an incredibly elegant spire of magically conjured marble, dedicated to Selune Moonbow and Coralin Larethian. This tower, along with temples to all the deities of the Seldarine, established Evereska as not merely a refuge, but a complete civilization capable of sustaining elven culture in all its aspects. But Evereska was never meant to be merely a city. The founders envisioned a complete civilization, self-sufficient and eternal. The entire vale was sculpted into a terraced garden wreathed in tall trees. Farmers cultivated using techniques that enriched rather than depleted the soil. Orchards produced fruits unknown elsewhere, their trees carefully crossbred to combine the best qualities of multiple varieties. The singing waters, the river flowing through the middle of the vale into the city itself, provided fresh water and served as a living artery connecting all parts of the settlement. Craftsmen established workshops where traditional skills could be preserved and refined. Bladesmiths forged weapons of exceptional quality, each blade an individual work of art. Jewelers created pieces incorporating magic, so subtle it seemed part of the design rather than an added enchantment. Weavers produced cloth that shimmered with its own light, requiring no dye yet displaying colors that shifted with the viewing angle. The population grew slowly, as all elven populations do. Unlike humans who breed prolifically, elves produce few children, and those children mature slowly, taking decades to reach adulthood. But this gradual growth suited the founders' vision perfectly. They had not fled the crown wars only to recreate the same mistakes of expansion and conflict. Evereska would remain manageable, a jewel rather than an empire. Yet within 1,000 years, by the year 7,600 before Dale Reckoning, the Vale had become overcrowded by elven standards. This led to a difficult decision. Some elves would need to leave to establish new settlements elsewhere. The result was the founding of Shaven in the southern reaches of the High Forest, a daughter community that would eventually contribute to the founding of Irlan. This migration demonstrated both Evereska's success and its limitations. The Vale could only support so many inhabitants while maintaining the quality of life the founders envisioned. As centuries passed, Evereska developed its own distinct culture. While maintaining connection to ancient elven traditions, the people of the Vale created new customs, new art forms, new ways of thinking. They synthesized elements from both Sun Elven and Moon Elven traditions, creating something unique. Music evolved into forms that incorporated the natural sounds of the Vale itself. Composers writing pieces meant to be performed in specific locations where wind through trees or water over stone would add unwritten harmonies. Poetry developed conventions that worked only in the elven tongue, playing with ambiguities and multiple meanings in ways translation could never capture. The governance structure reflected both pragmatism and tradition. The Hill Council ruled Evereska, composed of 12 hill elders led by the Watcher over the hills. Council members were chosen based on wisdom, magical skill, and service to the community. The council operated by consensus rather than voting, spending as long as necessary to reach agreement on important decisions. This could frustrate those seeking quick action, but it prevented the kind of impulsive choices that had doomed elven kingdoms in the past. Security remained paramount. The Mythal provided the first line of defense, but the elves were not naive enough to rely on magic alone. Rangers patrolled the mountains surrounding the Vale, watching for anyone who approached too close, ready to either redirect lost travelers or, if necessary, deal with genuine threats. Numerous watchtowers and small citadels were constructed in the mountains around the Vale, forming bases for patrols and aerial cavalry mounted on giant eagles. Within the Vale itself, military orders trained constantly, maintaining skills that they hoped never to use. The Swords of Evereska, a knightly order of Corellin, claimed to trace their heritage back to the time of flowers. The Vale Guard and Tomb Guard sworn to protect the city, and its honored dead trained, with the understanding that Evereska's survival might one day depend on their readiness. The relationship with the surrounding lands was complex. The Grey Peak Mountains were not empty wilderness. Tribes of orcs and goblinoids inhabited the ranges, dangerous enough in small groups, potentially catastrophic if they ever united under strong leadership. Giants wandered the highest peaks, territorial and unpredictable. Dragons nested in remote valleys, their presence a constant potential threat. And beyond the mountains lay Anarok, the great desert that had once been fertile land before Netheri's arrogance brought ruin. Evereska's defenders did not merely watch for threats approaching the Vale. They actively worked to keep surrounding dangers divided and weak. This was not cruelty for its own sake, but cold pragmatism born of survival necessity. The Elves of Evereska understood that they could not afford open warfare with every threat. Their numbers were too few, their home too precious to risk in battles that could be avoided. Better to remain unknown, unsuspected, dealing with threats before they became existential dangers. In the year 244 Dale Reckoning, during the year of the Elf Sands, Evereska's existence was uncovered by tel'quessir, the non-elven peoples. For the first time, human tribes of the Greycloak Hills learned of the hidden valley, though they kept the secret for centuries, either through respect or fear. This represented a fundamental shift. Evereska was no longer completely unknown to the outside world. The question became not whether outsiders knew of the city, but how to manage that knowledge and control who else might learn it. 2 centuries later, in the year 464 Dale Reckoning, a human named Aaron's son saved 3 Evereska elves from a Farum ambush while wandering across Anarok. He nearly died in the effort. Mistra herself retrieved him from death's edge and made him one of her chosen. Known as the Nameless Chosen, he became the first human ever to stay among Evereska's glades, establishing a precedent that would shape future relations between the hidden city and the wider world. As millennia passed, Evereska became something rare and precious in Faerun, a genuinely ancient elven community that had survived continuous occupation, that maintained unbroken cultural traditions reaching back before the founding of human civilizations, that preserved knowledge and magic considered lost elsewhere. The city was living history, a functioning remnant of an age when elves ruled vast realms and humans were scattered tribes just discovering agriculture. Yet this survival came with costs. The very isolation that protected Evereska also limited it. The population remained small, unable to grow significantly without compromising security or quality of life. Cultural evolution slowed compared to more cosmopolitan communities. And perhaps most significantly, Evereska existed in a kind of careful balance, devoted to preservation rather than innovation, to maintaining rather than expanding. The founders had made their choice when they created the mythal and withdrew into the veil. They had chosen survival over glory, endurance over expansion, the long, slow rhythm of elven time over the frantic pace of human ambition. And for over 10,000 years, that choice had proven correct. Empires had risen and fallen. Human kingdoms had flourished and collapsed into dust. Entire civilizations had appeared and vanished. But Evereska remained, unchanging, hidden, enduring. The ancient trees still remembered what stone had forgotten. The streams still whispered names without translation, and the secret pulsed with ancient life, waiting for trials yet to come. Section 2. The City Within the Veil. Walking through Evereska for the first time would reshape your understanding of what architecture can be. The city does not impose itself upon the landscape. It emerges from it, as though the valley itself dreamed of beauty, and the dream took solid form. Buildings flow between ancient trees, whose roots predate human civilization by millennia. Structures spiral upward in graceful curves that echo the growth patterns of living plants. Every surface catches light and transforms it, white marble seeming to glow with inner radiance, moonstone adorning doorways and windows in patterns that serve both decoration and enchantment. The main approach to Evereska comes from the east, through narrow passes in the mountains that rangers guard with obsessive vigilance. The path itself is treacherous, climbing steeply through terrain where a misplaced step could mean a fatal fall. But for those with permission to enter, for those who know the proper words and carry the correct tokens, the journey transforms as they near the veil. The moment of transition is subtle yet unmistakable. The air changes first, becoming warmer, sweeter, carrying scents of flowers that bloom nowhere else. The light shifts, taking on a quality that seems simultaneously sharper and softer. Then, as you round a final curve, the veil opens before you, and breath catches in your throat because no description, no matter how eloquent, can prepare you for the reality. The valley stretches for nearly 18 miles at its longest point, and 4 miles at its widest, cradled between peaks that rise to heights where snow never melts. The Singing Waters River flows through the vale's heart, fed by mountain streams so pure you can drink directly from them without fear. Ancient forests cover much of the valley floor, trees so massive that 10 elves holding hands could not encircle their trunks. The entire vale has been sculpted into a terraced garden wreathed in tall trees, where nature and elven craftsmanship blend so seamlessly that distinguishing between wild growth and deliberate cultivation becomes nearly impossible. Evereska proper occupies the central portion of the vale, spreading outward from 3 prominent hills known as the Sisters. These hills form a triangle around the inner city, with each rising to become a focal point for different aspects of elven life. The highest of these, called Belcrest, hosts the fountainheart of shimmering gold, a magnificent temple to Hanali Selenil, built of white marble and moonstone that seems to capture and hold the light of both sun and moon. There are no straight streets here, no rigid grids imposed by planning. Instead, pathways wind between buildings following lines of natural beauty, creating views designed to surprise and delight. You might turn a corner and find yourself facing a fountain where water dances upward in spirals that never quite seem to obey gravity's normal rules. Or you might emerge from between buildings to discover a garden where flowers bloom in colors that shift with the seasons, their cultivation representing centuries of careful breeding. The buildings themselves range from modest dwellings to structures that seem impossibly large and delicate simultaneously. The most common architectural material is white marble, stone that contains veins of crystal naturally formed over millions of years. Elven stonemasons work this marble with techniques that combine traditional masonry with subtle magic, shaping blocks that fit together with tolerances measured in hairsbreadths, creating walls so smooth they feel like polished glass, yet remain strong enough to withstand any conceivable assault. The moonspire deserves particular attention. This incredibly elegant spire of magically conjured marble rises as one of Evereska's most beautiful structures. Dedicated to Selune Moonbow and Coraline Larethian, the tower reaches toward the sky with proportions that would seem structurally impossible using conventional architecture. Yet, it has stood for millennia. Magic woven into the tower's very structure allows it to sway slightly in strong winds, rather than resisting through rigid strength, dispersing force that might otherwise crack the marble. Other significant structures include temples to all the deities of the Seldarine, each positioned according to sacred geometries and symbolic associations. The city contains libraries where rescued texts from fallen elven realms are preserved, their contents representing knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. Training grounds for military orders like the Swords of Evereska provide space where warriors maintain skills passed down through countless generations. Between towers and temples, between buildings large and small, gardens flourish with abundance that reflects both magical enhancement and centuries of horticultural expertise. These are not merely decorative spaces, but essential elements of Evereska's character. Every garden follows a carefully considered design, combining aesthetic beauty with practical purpose. Medicinal herbs grow alongside ornamental flowers. Fruit trees provide both shade and sustenance. Vegetables cultivated for exceptional flavor fill raised beds bordered by blooming perennials. The gardens change with seasons, though the mythos' influence means they never become truly barren. Winter brings evergreen plants into prominence. Spring explodes with color as bulbs planted in intricate patterns bloom in succession. Summer sees the full glory of roses bred over millennia. Autumn brings trees planted specifically for their fall foliage, leaves turning shades that seem to glow with internal light. Water features abound throughout the city, from simple fountains to elaborate cascades. The Singing Waters flows through the middle of the vale and into the city itself, providing fresh water while serving as a living artery connecting all parts of the settlement. Some fountains combine magic with natural water pressure, creating displays that seem to defy physics. Based on descriptions of other elven cities, we can infer that water holds both practical and symbolic significance in Evereska's design, representing the flow of time and the continuity of elven civilization. Daily life in Evereska follows rhythms utterly unlike human cities. There is no frantic rushing, no sense of time as enemy or constraint. Elves measure their lives in centuries, and this perspective shapes everything. A craftsman might spend decades perfecting a single technique, not from slowness, but from absolute dedication to quality. A scholar might devote a century to researching a single historical question, pursuing leads through archives that would exhaust any human researcher. The marketplace reflects this unhurried approach to commerce. Located in a series of interconnected plazas, the market operates not daily, but on specific days throughout the month, following patterns established over millennia. Merchants display their goods with careful attention to presentation, understanding that quality matters more than quantity, that reputation built over centuries matters more than immediate profit. You might find a silversmith who has spent decades perfecting techniques for working moonstone into settings that enhance the gem's natural luminescence. Beside them, a weaver displays cloth created using threads spun from silk, produced by caterpillars, that feed only on leaves from specific trees growing in Evereska's forests, resulting in fabric with unique properties. Food vendors offer not mere sustenance, but culinary art, with fruits grown in Evereska's orchards bred for flavor profiles impossible to achieve in normal growing conditions. But the market is not merely about goods exchanged. It is social space where news is shared, where friendships are renewed, where the scattered community gathers to reconnect. Rangers returning from long patrols report what they have seen in the mountains. Scholars share discoveries from their research. Musicians perform new compositions, seeking feedback from fellow artists. The social structure of Evereska centers on the Hill Council, composed of 12 hill elders led by the Watcher over the hills. Council membership is earned through exceptional service, profound wisdom, or extraordinary magical ability, rather than inherited. This could imply that Evereska values meritocracy over hereditary privilege. though informal hierarchies certainly exist based on family reputation and individual accomplishment. Magic pervades every aspect of life in Evereska, enhanced by the mythos presence. Nearly every elf possesses some magical ability, and children are instructed in basic spellcraft from early age. But true magical talent remains relatively rare, and those who possess it naturally rise to positions of influence. The most powerful mages maintain and repair the mythal, a task requiring constant vigilance and expertise that takes lifetimes to develop. Education happens through apprenticeship and personal instruction rather than formal schools. A child interested in magic studies with an accomplished wizard, spending decades absorbing technique, theory, and philosophy. Someone drawn to scholarship becomes assistant to an established researcher, learning through hands-on participation rather than lectures. This produces individuals with deep expertise, but also means specialization, with elves knowing vast amounts about narrow subjects while remaining relatively ignorant of topics outside their focus. Religious life centers on the Tel'quessir, with temples throughout the city positioned according to sacred geometry. The largest temple honors Corellin Larethian, chief of the Tel'quessir. Services are not weekly obligations, but personal choices, reflecting elven understanding of spirituality as personal journey. Priests serve as counselors and teachers rather than authority figures, guiding individuals rather than dictating correct belief. The defensive systems protecting Evereska extend far beyond the mythal. Numerous watchtowers and small citadels were constructed in the mountains around the Vale, forming bases for patrols and aerial cavalry mounted on giant eagles. The wards woven into the valley's fabric create layers of protection, each serving specific purposes. The outermost layer makes the Vale difficult to perceive, causing it to be overlooked or forgotten by those who lack specific knowledge of its location. Someone approaching without permission might look directly at the Vale's entrance, yet find their attention sliding away. If they persist, the terrain itself seems to shift, paths becoming confused, landmarks appearing in unexpected locations. Magical wards detect hostile intent, alerting rangers to potential threats. Depending on danger level, response might range from silent redirection to immediate intervention. Military orders like the Swords of Evereska, a knightly order of Corellin that claims to trace heritage back to the time of flowers, train constantly. The Vale Guard and Tomb Guard sworn to protect the city, and its honored dead maintain readiness for threats that might never come, but could arrive without warning. Every elf in Evereska understands that their survival depends on the city's continued concealment and the readiness of those who defend it. This creates a society that can seem unwelcoming to outsiders, suspicious, and guarded. There is truth to this perception. Evereska is not a cosmopolitan crossroads where all are welcomed. It is a refuge whose survival depends on exclusivity. Outsiders who do gain entry discover warmth and hospitality once accepted, but gaining that acceptance requires patience and understanding of what is at stake. The few humans who have visited Evereska and written about their experiences describe beauty that brings tears, magic so ubiquitous it becomes invisible. Elves who seem to exist slightly out of phase with normal reality. There is truth to this as well. Evereska exists as a fragment of the ancient elven past surviving into an age when such things should not be possible. It is living history, breathing myth, a place where the fantastic is mundane and the impossible occurs with casual regularity. As day fades to evening in the Vale, the city transforms. Lanterns fueled by magical light illuminate pathways with gentle radiance. Buildings glow with soft luminescence from enchantments woven into their structure. The stars above shine with exceptional clarity, the mythal filtering away atmospheric distortion. Music drifts through streets and gardens, from individuals playing for their own pleasure or small groups gathering spontaneously. Songs ancient beyond reckoning, yet remaining fresh because each performance is unique. This is Evereska at its essence. Beauty and strength intertwined, art and defense inseparable, ancient tradition and living culture united in carefully maintained balance. The city within the Vale, hidden from the world, guarding itself and the heritage it represents. A sanctuary that has endured for over 10,000 years through vigilance, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to survival. Section 3, Trials Through the Ages. 10,000 years is not merely a number to be spoken and forgotten. It represents countless generations, empires rising from nothing and crumbling to dust, entire species emerging and vanishing, the very geography of Faerun reshaping itself through cataclysm and gradual change. Through all of this, Evereska endured. But endurance should not be mistaken for ease. The hidden city survived not through luck or divine favor alone, but through blood and sacrifice, through choices that scarred the elven soul, through vigilance maintained even when it seemed unnecessary. The earliest threats came from predictable sources. Orc tribes in the Grey Peak Mountains occasionally grew bold or desperate enough to probe the Vale's defenses. These incursions rarely penetrated far, usually ending with warnings to others who might consider similar attempts. Giants proved more dangerous, their strength and relative intelligence making them formidable opponents even for skilled elven warriors. The watchtowers and small citadels constructed in the mountains around the Vale served as early warning systems and staging points for forces that could respond before threats reached the Vale itself. For millennia, Evereska maintained its isolation successfully. The Mythal's protections worked as intended, making the Vale nearly impossible to find through magical or mundane means. The rangers and military orders kept watch, their vigilance preventing most dangers from even approaching close enough to test the city's defenses. This could suggest that Evereska's strategy of concealment and preemptive action proved remarkably effective during the long centuries when no major powers threatened the region. The first significant breach of Evereska's secrecy came in the year 244 Dale Reckoning, during the year of the Elves. Human tribes of the Greycloak Hills discovered the hidden valley's existence. The circumstances of this discovery remain somewhat unclear in historical records, though we can infer that either the mythos protections failed temporarily or the humans stumbled upon the veil through extraordinary luck or persistence. Remarkably, these human tribes kept the secret for centuries, either through respect for the elves or fear of consequences should they reveal what they knew. 2 centuries later, in 464 Dale Reckoning, an event occurred that would establish precedent for future human-elven relations. A human named Aaron's son encountered 3 Evereska elves who had been ambushed by Farim while the elves traveled across Anarok. He saved them from the monsters, nearly dying in the effort. His sacrifice caught the attention of Mystra herself, who retrieved him from death's edge and made him one of her chosen. Known thereafter as the Nameless Chosen, he became the first human ever to stay among Evereska's glades. This event is significant because it demonstrates that even in ancient times, Farim posed threats to Evereska's people when they ventured beyond the Veil's protection. The creatures that dwelt beneath Anarok were imprisoned there by ancient Netherese magic, but they were never completely contained. Small numbers occasionally escaped or operated near the prison's boundaries, making the desert and surrounding mountains dangerous for travelers. For centuries more, Evereska continued in relative peace, managing minor threats through established protocols while maintaining its hidden status. The city grew slowly, its population reaching sustainable levels that the Veil could support without strain. Cultural traditions deepened and refined themselves. Knowledge accumulated in the archives. The mythal was maintained and strengthened through regular rituals performed by high mages, whose expertise grew with each passing generation. Then came the retreat, the great migration of elves to Evermeet that began in the 13th century Dale Reckoning. As elven communities throughout Faerun dwindled or disappeared entirely, their populations departing for the island sanctuary across the sea, Evereska took on new significance. It became one of the last substantial elven settlements remaining on the mainland, a distinction that brought both pride and burden. The true crisis, the conflict that would test whether Evereska could survive against determined enemies wielding power matching or exceeding what the city could bring to bear, erupted in the year 1372 Dale Reckoning. The Farim, those nightmare creatures that fed on magic itself, launched a coordinated assault against the hidden city. The Farim were beings that appeared to violate every natural law. They possessed no skeleton, no recognizable organs by conventional standards, yet they lived and thought, and wielded magic with casual power that humbled even accomplished elven mages. Worse, they were intelligent, organized, and driven by hunger that could never be satisfied. They fed on magic itself, draining enchantments, consuming the life force of spellcasters, leaving magical dead zones in their wake. These abominations had dwelt deep beneath Anarok for millennia, imprisoned there by ancient barriers created by the Netherese before their civilization fell. But those barriers had been weakening for centuries, and by the 14th century Dale reckoning, Faerûn were emerging in greater numbers, spreading across the desert and into surrounding lands. The siege of Evereska began gradually, almost imperceptibly. Small groups of Faerûn probed the Vale's outer defenses, testing responses, gathering information. When patrols were sent to drive them off, the creatures withdrew, but slowly, studying elven tactics and capabilities. Over months, the pressure increased. More Faerûn appeared. They began establishing bases in the mountains, creating fortified positions from which they could launch attacks. The council recognized the danger immediately. This was not a conventional military threat that could be handled through superior tactics or defensive positions. The Faerûn represented existential danger to everything Evereska stood for. They could consume the mythal itself, given time and opportunity. They could drain the Vale of all magical energy, turning the sanctuary into barren wasteland. Evereska's response combined military action with desperate diplomacy. Warriors and mages launched raids against Faerûn positions, seeking to disrupt their organization, prevent them from massing forces for concentrated assault. Meanwhile, ambassadors traveled to every elven community within reach, to human kingdoms that might be persuaded to help, even to dwarven holds traditionally isolated from surface world politics. The message was always the same. The Faerûn threatened everyone, not merely Evereska. If the monsters were not stopped here, they would spread. Some answered the call. Moon elves from other communities sent war bands to assist their cousins. Wizards from human cities recognized the threat and contributed their power to Evereska's defense. This coalition of forces suggests that despite Evereska's isolation, the city had maintained enough diplomatic connections to call for aid when truly necessary. The siege reached its most desperate phase in 1374 Dale reckoning. Faerûn surrounded the Vale, probing constantly for weakness, launching coordinated assaults against multiple points simultaneously. The mythal held, but the strain was tremendous. Its power stretched, maintaining barriers against creatures specifically evolved to break magical defenses. Elven mages worked in shifts, constantly reinforcing the wards, patching breaches the moment they appeared. The fighting was unlike anything Evereska had experienced in its entire history. Traditional combat tactics meant little against enemies that floated above the ground, that could not be flanked or cornered, that struck with spells and then withdrew before counterattacks could land. Casualties mounted steadily, not merely warriors killed in battle, but civilians drained of life force when Farum breached outer defenses. Salvation came through outside assistance, combined with Evereska's own determination. A group of adventurers who had been fighting Farum elsewhere in Faerun came to aid the city, though small in number. Their intervention at crucial moments allowed elven forces to concentrate on critical objectives. Combined efforts eventually succeeded in driving back the Farum assault, though at tremendous cost. But even as the Farum threat diminished, a different danger emerged, one that would prove in some ways more devastating because it came wearing the face of friendship. The Shadowvar, descendants of ancient Nethril who had survived in the Plane of Shadow, returned to Faerun. Initially, they presented themselves as potential allies against the Farum, and for a time, this seemed genuine. The Shadowvar did fight Farum, their shadow magic proving effective against the creatures. However, in 1372 Dale Reckoning, as Evereska still reeled from the Farum siege, Shadowvar forces suddenly turned on their supposed allies. The attack came without warning. A calculated assault designed to seize control of the Vale and access to Evereska's mythal and archives. The Shadowvar had studied Evereska during their supposed alliance, learning defenses and identifying vulnerabilities. What followed was brutal warfare, as Evereska's defenders fought to repel invaders who appeared from shadows, who wielded magic against which traditional counters proved ineffective. Based on accounts of the period, we can infer that this conflict represented one of the darkest moments in Evereska's history, with the city facing enemies who understood its defenses intimately and had planned their assault with meticulous care. The Shadowvar assault ultimately failed, though at tremendous cost. The city suffered extensive damage. Trust in outsiders, already fragile, was shattered. The council instituted even stricter security protocols, examining every person entering the Vale with enhanced magical scrutiny. These events fundamentally shaped modern Evereska's defensive posture and diplomatic approach. The combined trauma of the Farum Sea and Shadowvar betrayal left scars that persist to the present day. Hundreds of elves died in these conflicts. Portions of the city required reconstruction. But perhaps worst was the psychological impact, the shattering of any remaining illusion that Evereska's concealment provided absolute safety. The heroes who defended Evereska during these trials are remembered in song and story, their names inscribed on monuments throughout the city. The swords of Evereska and other military orders distinguished themselves repeatedly. High mages who maintained the mythal under impossible conditions prevented catastrophic failure of the city's primary defense. Rangers who held mountain passes against overwhelming numbers bought time for civilians to reach safety, but the cost is remembered too. Sections of the city rebuilt after these conflicts are deliberately made visible rather than hidden, serving as reminders that survival is never guaranteed. That vigilance must be maintained, that the price of failure is not merely military defeat, but cultural extinction. Every young elf growing up in Evereska learns the stories, walks past the monuments, understands that their beautiful hidden city exists on a knife's edge. The trials of the 14th century Dale reckoning forced Evereska to fundamentally reconsider its relationship with the wider world. The city could no longer rely primarily on concealment and passive defense. It needed allies, genuine military partnerships with other powers, who could provide assistance when Evereska's own forces proved insufficient. This represented a profound shift in policy, an acknowledgement that perfect isolation was impossible in an increasingly interconnected and dangerous world. In the aftermath, Evereska maintained more active diplomatic relationships while still protecting its most important secrets. The balance remained delicate, requiring constant adjustment. Share too little, and potential allies might not respond to future calls for aid. Share too much, and risk compromising the security that had preserved the city for 10 millennia. These experiences shaped modern Evereska's character fundamentally. The city became more militarized, with larger standing forces maintained at higher readiness. Investment in defensive magic increased dramatically, but the core principle remained unchanged. Evereska would endure, whatever the cost, preserving Sun Elven civilization for as long as stone stood and magic flowed. The trials through the ages were not merely military conflicts. They were tests of whether Elven civilization, as embodied in Evereska, could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining its essential character. Not all choices were made correctly. Not all lessons were learned on first attempt. But through all of it, through 10,000 years of challenges, both predictable and unprecedented, Evereska endured. Section 4: Mysteries and Hidden Knowledge. The libraries of Evereska rise throughout the city, their collections housing knowledge that predates human civilization by millennia. Within these walls rest texts that chronicle the rise and fall of empires, magical treatises from the great Elven academies before they became battlefields during the Crown Wars, historical accounts of events that shaped Faerun when the continent bore different names entirely. The founders brought these texts with them when they fled the burning ruins of Shamal Othrair, Miyaritter, Orishar, and Ialur. Understanding that preserving knowledge was as important as preserving lives. The archives represent one of Evereska's greatest treasures and heaviest responsibilities. These are not merely books, but repositories of knowledge accumulated over thousands of years from multiple Elven civilizations. When those realms fell, their libraries burned, their scholars died, and entire bodies of knowledge vanished. Only what was saved and brought to Evereska survived. This makes the hidden city an irreplaceable resource for understanding elven history, culture, and magical traditions that exist nowhere else in their complete forms. The publicly accessible collections, impressive as they are, likely represent only a portion of what Evereska truly guards. Based on what we know about elven attitudes toward dangerous knowledge and the city's obsessive security measures, we can reasonably infer that certain texts are restricted, available only to those who demonstrate both need and wisdom sufficient to handle them. The Council would naturally control access to magical knowledge that could be misused, or historical information that might compromise the city's security if it fell into wrong hands. The relationship between preservation and application creates ongoing tension within Evereska's scholarly community. Knowledge that is never used, never tested, never built upon, risks becoming static rather than living tradition. Yet releasing information widely would inevitably mean some falling into hands lacking wisdom to use it properly. This suggests that Evereska's archivists face constant decisions about what to preserve in sealed collections versus what to make available for study and application. Magic itself represents another form of hidden knowledge that Evereska preserves. High magic, the most powerful form of elven spellcasting, requires not merely learning spells, but understanding principles that can only be conveyed through personal teaching. The high mages who created and maintain Evereska's mythal possess expertise that takes centuries to develop. Knowledge passed down through direct apprenticeship rather than written texts alone. The mythal itself embodies magical knowledge in physical form. Creating such a construct requires understanding how to weave spells into the fabric of reality, how to anchor enchantments to draw power from the land rather than from casters, how to create self-sustaining magical fields that can persist for millennia. This knowledge exists in Evereska because the city's founders possessed it and passed it to successors. But the number of high mages capable of working at this level has declined over time. This decline raises concerns about what happens when the current generation passes on. Will enough students have mastered the art to maintain crucial enchantments? The mythal requires constant maintenance, regular rituals to repair wear and strengthen weakened areas. If this knowledge is lost because too few remain who understand it, Evereska's primary defense could fail not through enemy action, but through simple erosion of expertise. The temples throughout Evereska preserve religious knowledge and traditions. The fountain heart of shimmering gold dedicated to Hanali Selenil, the moonspire honoring Selune Moonbow and Coralin Larethian, and temples to all the deities of the Seldarine maintain practices that connect modern elves to their ancestors, stretching back before the Crown Wars. The rituals performed in these temples, the prayers spoken in ancient dialects, the ceremonies marking important transitions in elven life, all represent living knowledge passed down through unbroken chains of tradition. Military knowledge forms another category of carefully preserved expertise. The swords of Evereska, claiming to trace their heritage back to the time of flowers, maintain combat techniques developed over millennia. These are not merely sword strokes and tactical maneuvers, but complete martial philosophies combining physical prowess with magical ability. An elven blade master does not simply know how to fight, but understands the principles underlying combat, the psychology of conflict, the strategic considerations that make the difference between victory and defeat. The Veil Guard and Tomb Guard preserve different but equally important knowledge. Techniques for defending specific terrain, methods for coordinating between ground forces and aerial cavalry mounted on giant eagles, protocols for responding to different types of threats, all represent accumulated wisdom refined through millennia of experience. When these guards train, they practice scenarios based on actual historical conflicts, learning from mistakes that cost lives centuries or millennia ago. The relationship between Evereska and other elven communities involves careful negotiation around knowledge sharing. Moon elves, wood elves, and wild elves maintain their own traditions and archives, and they are not always willing to share freely with their sun elf cousins. Historical grievances dating back to the Crown Wars still influence interactions, suggesting that even among elves who share common ancestry, old wounds affect present relationships. The Elven Court on Evermeet represents the primary venue where different elven communities interact diplomatically. Evereska maintains permanent ambassadors there, representing the hidden city's interests while gathering intelligence about developments affecting elvenkind throughout Faerun. These ambassadors walk careful lines, sharing enough information to maintain good relations, while protecting Evereska's most important secrets. Human kingdoms present different challenges regarding knowledge. Most humans are unaware Evereska exists at all, and those who have heard rumors usually dismiss them as legends. This ignorance serves Evereska's interests well. However, some humans have proven themselves worthy of limited trust. The Harpers, a secretive organization dedicated to opposing tyranny and preserving knowledge, have maintained quiet relationship with Evereska for centuries. Based on what we can infer from their documented interactions with other elven communities, individual humans occasionally gain deeper access. The precedent established by Aaron's son, the nameless chosen who became the first human to stay among Evereska's glades, demonstrated that exceptional individuals could be trusted under appropriate circumstances. Exceptional scholars who spend lifetimes researching particular topics might be invited to consult specific texts. Heroes who have proven themselves through repeated actions defending innocent people might be offered training or sanctuary, but such invitations remain rare, extended only after extensive investigation. The magical traditions preserved in Evereska extend beyond high magic to encompass numerous specialized fields, divination techniques that allow glimpses of possible futures, warding methods that protect against specific threats, healing practices combining herbal knowledge with magical enhancement. All represent expertise accumulated over millennia. Each tradition has practitioners who dedicate centuries to mastering their chosen field, becoming living repositories of knowledge that exists in no written form. The price of Evereska's isolation extends beyond lost opportunities for collaboration. Cultural evolution slows when outside influences are limited. New ideas filter in gradually compared to the rapid changes in more cosmopolitan societies. Innovation requires creative friction, the collision of different perspectives that generates fresh insights. Evereska's small population and cultural homogeneity means such friction occurs less frequently than in larger, more diverse communities. Some younger elves recognize this limitation and chafe against it. They travel beyond the veil despite council warnings, seeking experiences unavailable in their isolated homeland. They study with human wizards, learning techniques that elven tradition dismisses as crude, but which prove effective nonetheless. When they return, they carry ideas that challenge how things have always been done, sometimes enriching Evereska's culture, sometimes causing conflicts with elders who view deviation from tradition as dangerous. The modern era has brought new pressures on knowledge preservation and security. Magical communication methods allow near instantaneous contact across vast distances. Teleportation circles make travel trivial for powerful spellcasters. Divination magic grows ever more sophisticated, threatening to pierce even the mythos protections. The world becomes more interconnected, and keeping secrets becomes increasingly difficult. The spell plague of 1385 Dale Reckoning demonstrated how Faerun-wide magical catastrophes can affect even hidden sanctuaries. When the weave collapsed temporarily, mythos throughout the world suffered damage. Evereska's protective barriers held, but barely, and only through desperate efforts by every high mage working simultaneously to stabilize failing enchantments. This crisis forced acknowledgement that Evereska's fate remains tied to Faerun as a whole, regardless of physical isolation. The current age presents both opportunities and dangers regarding knowledge preservation. Alliances with other powers threatened by common enemies create possibilities for sharing information that benefits all parties. But each sharing carries risk that knowledge might spread beyond intended recipients. The Council must constantly evaluate whether specific information is more valuable shared or protected, whether potential benefits of cooperation outweigh security risks. The knowledge locked in Evereska's collections represents both the city's greatest treasure and a question about purpose. This information could benefit the world, could advance magical understanding, could help defeat emerging threats, but releasing it would mean accepting risks that the Council has spent millennia trying to avoid. Based on Evereska's historical pattern of extreme caution, we can infer that most knowledge will remain sealed, guarded jealously, accessible only to those few deemed worthy. This creates a paradox at Evereska's heart. The city exists to preserve elven civilization, to safeguard knowledge and culture that would otherwise be lost. But preservation requires isolation, and isolation means the preserved knowledge benefits almost no one beyond Evereska's small population. The city becomes archive rather than active participant in advancing magical understanding or cultural development. Whether this represents success or failure depends on perspective. Evereska has survived 10,000 years. The knowledge is preserved. The traditions continue. By these measures, the city has achieved exactly what its founders intended. But preservation is not the same as vitality. Knowledge unused might as well not exist. Culture that does not evolve risks becoming ossified, beautiful, but ultimately separate from the life flowing around it. These tensions define Evereska's relationship with knowledge. The mysteries remain hidden. The secrets stay locked away. And the debate continues about whether this represents wisdom or whether, in protecting everything so carefully, Evereska risks making itself irrelevant even while remaining secure. The answer may only become clear centuries hence, when history judges whether the hidden city's choices served the greater good of elvenkind, or merely ensured that when Evereska finally falls, it will take irreplaceable knowledge to the grave. Section 5. The Legacy and Enduring Spirit. The first rays of dawn break over the Grey Peak Mountains, as they have for 10,000 years, painting white marble with gold and copper, setting moonstone windows ablaze with refracted light. Another day begins in Evereska, measured not by human urgency, but by elven time, the slow, patient rhythm of immortal beings who count decades as humans count weeks. An elf rises from meditation that replaced sleep centuries ago, preparing to tend gardens their great-grandparent planted 500 years past. A scholar descends into archives seeking answers to questions that will require another lifetime to fully explore. A ranger departs on patrol that will last months, watching boundaries that must never fail. This is Evereska's legacy, captured in these quiet morning moments, repeated endlessly across millennia. Not grand gestures or dramatic victories, though those occurred and are remembered. Not treasures hoarded or powers accumulated, though the city possesses both. The true legacy is simply this: continuation, persistence, the absolute refusal to vanish into history's darkness. Like so many other elven realms, whose names are now barely remembered, even in the longest memories. When humans speak of elven civilization, when scholars research what elves achieved before human kingdoms rose, when bards sing of ancient glories and lost wonders. They often reference Myth Drannor, the city of song, whose beauty and magical advancement became legendary. Myth Drannor opened itself to all races, human and dwarf, and halfling welcomed alongside elves, creating cosmopolitan culture unlike anything seen before or since. For centuries, it seemed to prove that different peoples could coexist peacefully, that cooperation produced wonders exceeding what any single race could achieve alone. Then, Myth Drannor fell. Betrayal from within, demonic invasion from without, combined to destroy in months what had taken centuries to build. The survivors scattered. The knowledge was lost or locked away. The great experiment in interracial cooperation ended in blood and ashes. Today, Myth Drannor stands as a cautionary tale about ambition and trust misplaced. Evereska learned different lessons from history. Where Myth Drannor embraced openness, Evereska chose concealment. Where Myth Drannor welcomed all, Evereska remained exclusive. Where Myth Drannor reached outward seeking to influence the wider world, Evereska turned inward, focusing on preservation. And Evereska survived, while Myth Drannor fell. This comparison illustrates philosophical divide at the heart of elven civilization, whether survival requires engagement with the wider world or isolation from it. Evereska stands as proof that isolation can work. 10,000 years of continuous occupation speak louder than any theoretical argument. The city endures when others fell. The culture persists when others vanished. The knowledge remains preserved when other archives burned. By these measures, Evereska's approach has been vindicated, yet the question remains whether mere survival represents sufficient achievement. Elven civilization once ruled vast territories across Faerun, mighty empires whose borders stretched for thousands of miles, whose magical achievements shaped the continent itself. Today, elves are scattered minority, their numbers dwindling, their influence limited to isolated pockets where they maintain precarious holds on ancestral lands. Evereska preserved Sun Elven culture, but Sun Elves as a people have declined dramatically from ancient heights. The cultural significance of Evereska extends far beyond its physical boundaries. For elves throughout Faerun, the hidden city represents continuity with the past, tangible connection to ancestors who walked the same streets millennia ago. An elf born in human lands who has never visited Evereska still knows it exists, knows their heritage is preserved there, knows that if circumstances turn dire, Evereska remains as potential sanctuary. This psychological importance cannot be overstated. Elves live with historical memory in ways humans cannot fully understand. An elf who appears young by their people's standards might personally remember events that humans know only through written history. They watched empires rise and fall, saw cities built and abandoned, experienced the ebb and flow of civilizations across centuries. This creates perspective that can seem detached to shorter-lived beings, but it also creates deep appreciation for continuity. When that elf thinks of Evereska, they think not merely of the current city, but of all its history, the unbroken chain connecting present to depths of past. They know that elves walked those streets before humans discovered writing. That knowledge preserved in those archives predates human civilization itself. That the mythal protecting the veil has endured longer than any human kingdom will ever exist. This connection to deep time anchors elven identity in ways humans, who live perhaps 80 years, can never replicate. For other races, Evereska occupies different place in cultural consciousness. Most humans are unaware the city exists at all. Those few who know of it regard it as legend or curiosity, interesting but irrelevant to their daily concerns. This suits Evereska perfectly, as the city's survival depends on remaining unknown to most of the world. The role Evereska plays in preserving elven civilization is both crucial and limited. Crucial because the city maintains knowledge and traditions that exist nowhere else in their complete forms, serving as repository for culture reaching back before the Crown Wars. Limited because a single city, no matter how well preserved, cannot sustain an entire civilization indefinitely without broader connections and exchanges. The Council recognizes these challenges even while maintaining policies that contribute to them. Recent centuries have seen subtle shifts in approach, slightly increased openness to carefully vetted outsiders, marginally greater engagement with other elven communities, and select allies. The Farum siege and Shadowvar betrayal demonstrated that absolute isolation is unsustainable when facing threats of sufficient magnitude. Evereska needs allies, genuine partnerships with other powers, who can provide assistance when the city's own forces prove insufficient. These changes proceed glacially by human standards, barely perceptible even to elves who live through them. But they represent acknowledgement that pure isolation carries its own dangers. The balance between secrecy and survival grows ever more difficult to maintain as the world becomes more interconnected and threats evolve. The future Evereska faces is uncertain in ways it has not been for most of its history. The world changes more rapidly than ever before, magical and technological advancement accelerating, power balances shifting, new factions emerging while old ones vanish or transform. Adapting to this acceleration while maintaining essential character represents challenge unlike any the city has previously confronted. Based on what we know of Evereska's trajectory, we can infer several possibilities. The city might gradually open further, becoming regional center for elven culture, while maintaining enough security to protect its most important secrets. Alliances could strengthen to point where Evereska no longer needs to rely primarily on concealment. The population might grow through immigration of elves seeking connection to traditional culture. Alternatively, Evereska might fail to adapt quickly enough, maintaining isolation until it becomes increasingly irrelevant, preserved in careful stasis while the world moves on without it. Internal divisions between progressive and conservative factions could create tensions that weaken the community from within. The mythal might eventually fail if knowledge of how to maintain it is lost. Most likely, the truth will lie between extremes. Evereska will continue much as it has, making small adjustments, surviving crises through combination of preparation and determination, maintaining its role as keeper of elven heritage while remaining fundamentally separate from mainstream of Faerun's developments. 10,000 years ago, refugees fleeing the crown wars made a choice. They chose survival over glory, preservation over expansion, the long, slow certainty of hidden sanctuary over the dramatic gambles of open power. That choice shaped everything that followed, creating city unlike any other. Culture focused on endurance rather than achievement. Society dedicated to maintaining what was rather than creating what might be. The legacy of that choice surrounds you if you stand in Evereska today. You see it in ancient trees that predate human kingdoms, in buildings that have sheltered generations beyond counting, in faces that carry features unchanged for millennia. You hear it in songs whose words come from languages barely spoken elsewhere, in the slow, rhythmic poetry of speech that never hurries because time stretches infinitely forward. You feel it in the weight of history, the presence of accumulated centuries pressing down like atmosphere, inescapable. This is what Evereska preserves and what it sacrifices for preservation. Beauty and knowledge and tradition, maintained through absolute dedication across time spans that defy human comprehension, but also isolation and the careful balance between staying hidden and staying relevant, between preserving the past and adapting to the present. The whispering secrets of Evereska are not merely historical curiosities or magical formulas locked in archives. The deepest secret is simpler and more profound, that choosing to survive sometimes means making difficult compromises, that preservation and growth exist in tension that cannot be fully resolved, that every decision carries costs that compound across centuries. Yet still the city stands. Still the dawn breaks over white marble towers. Still the gardens bloom in colors found nowhere else. Still the rangers patrol eternal boundaries. Still the scholars seek wisdom in ancient texts. Still the music plays, the same songs sung for thousands of years, voices joining in harmonies that their ancestors sang, that their descendants will sing, linking past and future in continuous chain. This is Evereska's enduring spirit, the core that has sustained it through ages of darkness and disaster, through sieges and betrayals, through the slow erosion of time itself. Not merely stubbornness, though elves possess that in abundance. Not merely magic, though the mythal remains crucial. But something deeper, a conviction that what they preserve matters, that maintaining connection to the past justifies the sacrifices required, that being keeper of elven heritage in its truest form is purpose sufficient to warrant any burden. Whether that conviction is wisdom, or whether circumstances will eventually prove otherwise, these are questions each observer must consider. The city makes no apologies for its choices. It simply continues, day after day, year after year, century after century, standing as living monument to the principle that sometimes the greatest achievement is to persist when everything else has fallen. The singing waters flows through the vale as it has for 10 millennia. The moonspire reaches toward the sky, its marble seeming to glow with captured starlight. The fountain heart of shimmering gold catches the dawn, reflecting it across Belcrest in cascades of gold and silver. The three sisters stand eternal watch over the inner city, and Evereska endures, hidden, patient, eternal, whispering its secrets to those few who earn the right to hear them. If you enjoyed discovering the hidden secrets of Evereska and learning about this ancient elven sanctuary that has endured for 10 millennia, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue bringing you deep explorations of dungeons and dragons' lore, uncovering the mysteries that make Faerun such a rich and fascinating world. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may your own journeys be filled with wonder and discovery.